Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is the 5-minute watch review. My name is Strider, or you can call me Little Jim. Most videos are going to be 5 minutes long, but extra special watches get the spotlight. And that could be as long as 20 minutes. So strap in, we're going for a ride.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me as always. My name is Jim and I'm here to discuss some watches with you. Today, I get the wonderful honor to bring out an Aragon watch to you called the Silverjet. Now, it has been a long time since I have had the chance to come out here in front of a camera and talk about a watch from this brand. As a matter of fact, the last time that I did, the brand wasn't even Aragon yet. It was still Android watches. And back then, they were making some really huge, ginormous, incredibly large watches. And that's not always the case today. Some of those customers have carried over and they have continued to satisfy them, but they are working in what I feel is a much more agreeable realm, which allows them to make watches that are popular in both the original large sizes and a more moderate size for more people's wrists. Now, when you go back to the foundation of the brand, going back again before it was Aragon to when it was Android, Liang and his sister Angela were the ones who founded the company. They did so back in the 90s, so well over 30 years ago. And I've had the wonderful chance to get to know and befriend Wing for about 20 years now. So that's why I say this is a really special pleasure to come out here and bring this watch. Now, when I talked to Wing a few weeks ago, we were discussing watches, and one of the things we were talking about was sizing. And I said, yeah, I said, you know what? I said, it's funny because when you go back to when he and I used to sit side by side and talk about watches to a lot of people, the norm was a 48 to 50 millimeter watch. That wasn't crazy back then. And nowadays, even people like myself have adjusted way, way down, where my personal comfort zone is between 42 and 44 millimeter, and I may stretch it a little bit higher every now and then for something special. And we got to talking about a few of the models that he's making, and one of the really interesting ones is right here in my hand. This is the big, brutish diver known as the Silverjet. The Silverjet actually goes back a few generations. There have been a lot of different iterations of this particular watch, and we've seen it evolve quite a bit. Now, while this is still a substantial sized watch, you'll notice it's not an enormous watch. I couldn't wear it around my neck as a piece of fashion jewelry. But one of the things that Wing is known for is taking industrial design and melding it in with this incredible futuristic DNA. And he takes this and creates an architecture which is both complex and somehow it looks a lot more simple when you've got it on the wrist. But when you start dissecting it, you look at the way that he manufactures his bracelets and the way he manufactures his cases, and you think, how do these designs come out of one person's head? That's exactly what they do. Wing is the one that sits down and completely designs everything they do from top to bottom. And one of the interesting things that I always liked about what Wing did is he would do something like take a very industrial and tough looking watch like this and throw in a jewelry aspect like this black mother of pearl dial. And to me, the dial speaks as much about the beauty of this watch as the case and bracelet design do. And to back all that up, it's got a solid movement inside. It's got the SII NH37 movement. So what you've got here is the exact same as the NH35, but with the addition of an AM/PM indication up toward I think it's the 10 o'clock, yeah, about the 10 o'clock position on the dial. So you've got a rock solid movement that everybody knows and loves. It's a great automatic movement. It's not the most accurate in the world, but it's also not an inaccurate movement either. They're reliable. They seem to run just about forever, to the point where almost every major micro brand, and I know it sounds funny saying major micro, but almost every important micro brand out there is running an NH series movement, whether it was 35, 37, 25, whatever the caliber is, they're running one of these movements because they are, and I hate to overuse the term, but they are pretty much bulletproof. So I'm going to quit this intro right here, and we're going to go straight. We're going to jump straight into the desktop review of this watch. We're going to take a look at it together and see if it's something that may trip your trigger.
When I wake up at night, I gotta know the time. Can I sleep some more? Out of bed I climb. Check throughout my workday, counting down to lunch. Looking at my wrist all day, checking the time a bunch. It's not just about the time, it's part of my identity. The character of the design, exhibiting my complexity. The colors, my mood, rushed out the house without it, I'm screwed. Without my watch, feel nude. It's part of my life, it's who I am. I'm a big-time watch lover, a huge-ass fan. I know my phone has a clock, but I don't care. My phone lacks the flair. My watch shows my personality, my individuality, my interest in love.
Okay, at the risk of sounding redundant, let's talk about Aragon watches just for a second, because I know there are going to be lots of people watching this video that aren't very familiar with Aragon yet, and I think it's time that you become associated with them, because I think you'll dig them. Aragon Watches was formerly known as Android Watches, and they've been manufacturing funky, modern, and futuristic style watches for over 3 decades. From humble beginnings in local South Florida shopping malls to exploding in popularity with direct sales and televised sales, Liang, the founder of the brand, has piloted his creation through it all. Wing founded the brand with his sister Angela, and from the beginning to now, their primary focus has been on wildly unique designs and maintaining fair pricing, no matter how crazy the watch may have actually been designed. Let's go ahead and get this open so you can see the packaging. And I really do dig this Aragon packaging. This is the first time that I've had a chance to go hands-on with any Aragon watches, because the brand shifted from Android to Aragon after I had left the industry and began going into other things. I like the silver foil that's in there. It's a very elegant packaging compared to the minimalistic and modernistic packaging that I had associated with the previous brand. Even with the biggest sellers in the industry that began cannibalizing each other, Wing held to his principles of unique creative design, and his niche following grew to a huge fan base because of it. Now, here's what I'm talking about. Now, I don't have any examples of early Aragons to show you. I could probably break out a couple of my old Androids, and I thought about it, but I know that it's not really good to very closely associate this brand to the previous brand, because while there are similarities, there are definitely some big differences. Let's take a look at the case construction here, because for me, that was always one of the things that I enjoyed the most about Wing's designs, when he would do something like this. And I'm having a hard time remembering, but I believe maybe one of the earliest models he did this case and cradle design may have been the Power Jet. There have been a few different models with the Jet name in there: Silverjet, Power Jet. I think there's a couple more now in the new line. And I'm having to reach back in my mind like 15 years here, guys, and my brain doesn't work all that well. But I really like this, because if you look, the bottom side of the case is one large milled piece of 3/16 stainless steel. Then you have the mid case, which is actually the round, the cylindrical case that holds the movement, the dial, the crystal, and the bezel caps it off. That's sitting down inside of here. Then you have the top case here, and that's all sealed together with this case back and sandwiched in between that and the bezel. So you have this flat piece of steel that's been beveled off for the lugs. That sits on top. There's obviously a big hole in that this whole watch just drops right into. And that split right there, you're taking what would normally be a standard crown guard and you're splitting it into 4 pieces. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 piece crown guard. Very slick, very cool. And you see that these screws that go through here are actually real. There's the hardware from behind that's screwing all of this together. There is the signed crown. I dig the crown. Lots of knurling on the crown, by the way. Let me go ahead and pop it back in for winding. Very positive traction on that crown. Really dig that. It is a screw-down crown because you're looking at a 200-meter water-resistant timepiece. There is the orient of that beautiful black mother of pearl. It's got some nice orient to it. Orient is what you call the chatoyance of pearl. And it looks beautiful. It has a lot of depth to it, lots of color. And if I remember correctly, Wing only uses grade A and presentation grade mother of pearl. That means there are going to be no imperfections, cracks, veins, or anything anywhere on this pearl dial. It's beautifully done. You have the minute scale that is screen printed around the outer chapter. Then you have individually applied indices that give you the hour indications. And I think it's probably important to take a quick look at the lume. We break out the UV light here and just give it a quick flash just for a couple of seconds. Don't need to really overdo it. Yeah. And the lume is fantastic. And that's another thing that Wing had become known for. I would say probably closer toward, I think 2008, he really put a big emphasis on it, and then going forward. He's even made watches. There was one called the bioluminescence, where it had lume going through pocketed areas in his steel bracelet. You had lume in the crown. He was one of the first brands to ever do luminescence in a crown. And also he was one of the first to do a fully lumed bezel as well. So a lot of cool things that Wing has accomplished over the years. And I honestly don't think that he sees how brilliant his design sense really is. He's got a specific design DNA that's unmistakable no matter what category of watch he's designing. And no matter how popular he's gotten, he's always remained very grounded and very humble. Now, as you could tell, I like Wing a lot. Wing and I have been friends for a very long time, and it's hard to be completely unbiased when it comes to his work. But having owned and worn many of his watches over the years, I think it's pretty easy to see from those that have known me for any length of time that I really do appreciate the workmanship that he has put into his watches. Now, has he made some very inexpensive watches to hit a price point? Absolutely. This doesn't really feel like one of those, though. You can feel it in the bezel. Nice solid clicks. Let's see if there's any. There's no backplate to it. That's really, really solid. It's smooth, but the notches that are there are very, very positive. There's a good knurling that goes all the way around the bezel for grip. It sounds good and feels good. I like the fact that it didn't have any wiggle or play. Is there any downward play? No. It's fit in there very, very well. This is a premium built case. So I'm going to say this is probably not one of the Aragons that you can get in the $100 price range. I'm not sure what the actual price is on this, unfortunately, because it's not on their website as of right now, as I'm reviewing this. When I talked to Wang and he said, hey, if you're interested, I'll send a few watches out to you to take a look at. And I, of course, jumped at it. And I was just assuming that whatever he was sending me was current production that's currently available, that I could just quickly look up on the website and get the dimensions and things like that. No, unfortunately not. So I don't know what the price is. What I will do is if I come across the price between the time I'm recording this now and the time I'm editing the video later, I will print up on the screen what the price is. If I had to guess this, knowing that he likes to price things lower than they're worth, I'd say this is probably somewhere between $450 and $550, whereas most brands making on this level would probably be around $800 or $900. So that's just me guessing. Don't take that as any sort of gospel in any way. Let's talk for a second about the movement. I mentioned this in the intro, but he is using the SII NH37 movement, which is identical to the NH35. The only difference, and I'm going to move the hands out of the way so you can see it, and I apologize that when I was doing the photography, the hands obscured that, because the proper way to set your hands when you're doing photography is 10, 07, 37. That's where you should be, because normally that lets you see the brand name and it lets you see whatever important spec info may be on the dial, and it usually leaves all the important things uncovered. Unfortunately, in this case, it did not. That is a very simple AM/PM indication so that you know if this is 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. If you go to pick it up, let's say you don't have a watch winder and the movement has run itself down and you're going to wind it and you're going to set the time and date, you know whenever you pick this up if it's going to be in AM or PM.
I keep buying more to satisfy my urges. I can't stop collecting, overspending splurges, emptying the bank. Now I got too many payments on bezel services.
Let's talk about the things I like and don't like about this watch, and we could talk about the specs. As far as the specs go, your case on this, if you measure on the bezel, should be 44 millimeters. I'm going to double check that just to be safe. Yep, you're right at 44 millimeters. If you go to measure the case, you've got the big crown guards, which unfortunately make it bigger than it should be, bringing it to 45. And if you go in this direction, it reads even larger. So what I'll say is this. This wears like a 45 millimeter true case. So keep that in mind. This is going to be a big boy, but it's not crazy because the alternate version of the Silverjet is 50 millimeters. That's big. That's bigger than I ever want to wear again. Again, as I mentioned before, 20 years ago, that would not have been out of place for me at all. And I talked a lot of people into trying 50 millimeter giant oversized watches, and it became normal for them as well. That's just not the way it is these days. Okay, so let's talk about the thickness of the case, because that's going to be another important thing. It is 15 millimeters in thickness, so 15 millimeters high off of the wrist. The lugs are pretty severe. They drop down severely, and the bracelet begins to drop immediately from the end link as well. So that's what allows us to wear like a 45 instead of feeling more like a 47. Because when you look at it, it looks pretty darn big. Now, I can't size this because this is not my watch. It is going back to Aragon when I'm done with it. So you see, it is big. Now, I have a big wrist. I have just under an 8-inch wrist. I'm not a tiny guy by any stretch, but I'm not big, fat, overweight, or anything like that. As you see, I have bone right there. It's not like an inch of flesh. So I carry this off. I'm going to say right now, most people are going to have a hard time. I would tell you 7-inch wrist and above should be in this watch. Now, if you're looking at the full-size Silverjet, the 50 millimeter, I would tell you you got to have at least an 8-inch wrist to carry that off, because that is a big, bad boy. Now, back to the specs, also back to the movement. You've got a power reserve of 42 hours on this. It is a 24 joule movement running at 21.6. And by the way, if you're using a watch winder, it doesn't matter which way you have it set to rotate, because it is a bi-directional movement. So doesn't matter how you set it up. It's going to stay wound for you. That also means it's going to be very efficient on the wrist. They did a really nice job on the bluing of the rotor. Looks really nice. I love the bracelet on this. It looks like an extremely complex bracelet. If you go back a generation or two of Silverjet, the main reason that people bought that watch was for the very, very intricate bracelet. It was almost like a sandwich of materials when they put it together. It was really, really crazy. But that had to be crazy expensive to manufacture as well. And it's nice to see that Wing is able to simplify it just a little bit and still keep a very complex look. This actually looks even more complex and more upscale than an engineer bracelet. And I love an engineer bracelet. It's very, very comfortable. So it's got a nice, I don't want to say softness, but I think you guys know what I mean. The way that it's going to wrap around the wrist. Doesn't feel stiff at all. There's no kinking or binding with the links. So overall, very complex manufacturing on the case. Solid movement inside. Beautiful construction on the bracelet. Very, very comfortable. A little disappointed in the fact that he's still using friction pins. At this level, I would really like to have seen screws instead of friction pins. Now, I realize for a lot of people, it's going to be easier for them because they don't have to go to a jeweler. They can size it themselves, and that may be a big plus for you. Totally get that. And for many watches, I think it's totally fine. But there's something about this watch that it feels hefty, it feels tough, it feels bulletproof. And when you feel the way the bezel clicks, you feel the heft in the hand, you feel the way the crown is knurled and the grippiness to it and the way it screws in, you realize that it's 200 meters water resistant. There's something about it that makes you go, I really think that this should have screws instead of friction pins. But if that's all I can really nitpick about it, that's really not that bad. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the Aragon Watch Silverjet. This construction quality is fantastic. The movement choice is fantastic and aligns with other watches in the price range that I'm assuming this is in. So, all the way around, good choices. If you were to ask me, should I invest in this brand or not? I would say yes. Do you want a Silverjet? If you've got a man-sized wrist and you can carry off traditionally a 46 millimeter, again, I say this wears more like a 45, then yes, I think you're going to like it. You're going to love the heft of the watch, the thickness and heft of the bracelet, the way that it feels. It's a very tough feeling diver. If you're used to very lightweight casual watches, this probably isn't going to be for you. Anyway, that wraps it up for the Aragon Watch Silverjet. Thank you guys so much for joining me as always, and I'll see you on the next video.